All right, another Carolina podcast emergency Monday cast, emergency Spurs upcast. Pearson Fowler here, Chris Clark and Wes Mitchell alongside me as always. I'm very impressed to see both of you still on your feet after an unbelievably busy weekend. We got 5 Spurs up from Coach Will Muschamp this weekend, and I'll just start by asking both of you this. Other than signing day in the early signing period, has there ever been a single weekend that yielded 5 Spurs up since Coach Muschamp got here?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I mean, it was definitely the busiest weekend, I think, as far as like camp stuff going on. And Chris picked me up on Friday. I had a prior thing I needed to go to, and then, camp Saturday, Spurs up all along the way, then official visitors all weekend. It was hard work covering it. I can't imagine being like in the building over there, sort of just making sure, your assistant coaches and then your Jessica Jacksons of the world and all those folks that are having to handle everything that was going on this weekend. It was crazy, man. And I think we'll probably look back and say this was a big weekend for South Carolina football.
And for Jessica Jackson, I mean, busy weekend for everybody, but for her especially, she is, first of all, outstanding at what she does. She's got to be in a good mood all the time. Like, I can't imagine that. Like, I didn't see either of you guys this weekend, and I like both of you, but I probably didn't want to see y'all this weekend because I'm sure you were just so busy that you were just work zombies. She can't be like that. She can't ever have an off day. So shout out Jessica Jackson. You do an awesome job. Before we get into it, I want to give you guys a heads up. All of the camp thoughts that we were anticipating talking about today, we're going to put that off for a separate podcast that we're going to record later in the week because we have so much recruiting-specific stuff to get to today. So we're going to go through the 5 Spurs up this weekend. We're going to go through the official visitors that were here in Columbia this weekend. And also want to remind you guys as we get going to rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends. It really helps us. If you like us doing this and you want us to do more of it, that's the best way to support the podcast. All right, guys, let's jump right in. 5 Spurs up this weekend. You want to go in chronological order?
Sure, if we can remember the chronology of it.
Yeah.
Was first O'Donnell Fortune?
Yeah, Sumter
That's right.
DB.
Sumter DB, O'Donnell Fortune.
That was Friday afternoon or Friday morning.
Sure.
Yeah, that was Friday afternoon.
Friday
right?
afternoon. Sorry, I'm a little, fried.
Then you had Makiya Scott,
Yep.
which was Friday later afternoon, came out Friday evening as far as him putting it out.
Yep.
And then there was another one late Friday because I just remember it happening during the NBA game.
Yes, third Spurs up. We didn't know at the time who it was, but that was Matt Oliveira, right, that just came out today.
Excellent pronunciation, by the way.
Yep.
I don't know that for sure. It just sounded good, so just go with it. Just say it with confidence.
Pure guess.
So that was the last one that was revealed to us. It was actually the third commit. And then Saturday was Boogie.
Yeah, you had
Alex
Boogie
Huntley
from Hammond. He was the 4th of the weekend. Then we had Trey Jones.
That's right.
So let's get started.
In-state offensive lineman.
All right, we're going to go back to Friday morning, Friday early afternoon. O'Donnell Fortune, walk me through his recruitment process and his commitment.
O'Donnell's a guy from Sumter High, and he's been on the radar for a while. I mean, South Carolina's liked him. They've had him under evaluation. They checked on him this spring. He had some offers, to his credit. Not a huge offer list, but he had some Power 5 offers. I think the biggest ones are really like Virginia, Syracuse, so he hadn't really blown up yet. But South Carolina, look, they always use summer camp is really big, especially at the defensive back position. Defensive back's one of the hardest positions to evaluate just based on film. So that's why, going out to schools for these coaches for the spring evaluation period is so big, gathering that information. And then, look, Will Muschamp's a DB coach, by trade. He's a defensive coach. Defensive back's his background, so he likes to also get eyes on these guys in summer camp as well. So they saw Fortune, the size checked out. He's 6'1", pushing 6'2", with long arms. He's got really good ball skills. He ran pretty well. He ran in the 4.5 range. He vertical jumped over 30 inches. And so the measurables checked out, and what he did in one-on-ones and how he moved, that also checked out. And he wanted to be a Gamecock. He was a guy that, got the offer after camp and committed on the spot. So the staff saw enough to where they really liked him and they were sold on him. He's a guy that could realistically play corner or safety at the next level with what he can do.
So he is officially listed as a 2-star guy, but he's rangy, 6'2", 172. And I think this is one of those situations where, even if it's not necessarily moving the needle, as you mentioned, I mean, this is Will Muschamp's position. I feel like you trust his scouting, trust his instincts, and especially with this being a local guy. And like you mentioned, they like to cross-train defensive backs anyways, and when you have a guy that's a little bit longer, that may be able to be a little bit more physical than just like your standard cover corner wherever, I think having that versatility is something that appealed to the coaching staff as well. I'm recruiting Fortune.
Sure. And, he was a guy that, again, they've liked. And you take a guy this, or you offer a guy this early. I mean, this is the offer he wants. And so you got to sort of put yourself in the shoes of the coaching staff when you're breaking it down. They knew that you offer this kid, he's going to commit, and so you better be ready. And so that really shows you that they were sold on his game and what he could do. And I think we've seen this every year that we've covered Muschamp at South Carolina. Is there's always kids that pop up at camp, and defensive back is one where you can look back and definitely see some guys that have flown under the radar a little bit that they've really identified in camp that they've liked and then they've pursued.
Next guy up, the first of two defensive tackles to commit to South Carolina this weekend, Makiya Scott, a defensive tackle from Gainesville, Georgia, 3 stars. Wes, since Chris took the last one, I'll let you start with Makiya Scott. Walk me through his recruitment and his commitment process.
Yeah, he's a guy that South Carolina has, I think, been in pretty good shape with for some time. Been on campus a couple times and has really given rave reviews, I think, pretty much every time. I think he was in January and March and then back for camp. He actually worked out at camp for South Carolina this week, and I think they sort of verified what they already thought of him as far as his ability as a player. A true defensive tackle, but a kid that moves well for his size, has some explosiveness to him. When they do these camps, there's a combine portion of it where they're checking out to see if they match sort of the measurables that they're looking for, and then obviously they put them through drills as well, and Makiya's checked out in all those areas, and I think, kind of a low-key, almost straightforward recruitment. There wasn't a lot of, drama to it. He came to South Carolina this week and committed, and that was that. And it's a kid that had a number of offers. He's a 3-star guy on Rivals, but again, you see the type of athletes and the type of players they're getting at the defensive line position, and you can never have too much depth at that spot either. So maybe a bit overlooked as far as South Carolina fans go, just because we're talking about the Alex Huntleys and the Jordan Birches potentially and the Miles Murphys of the world, but was a guy that South Carolina has been on really throughout the recruiting cycle as well. Yeah,
and you might look at his offer list at Cincinnati. It's East Carolina, Memphis, Wake Forest, and Western Kentucky. I think that is all 6. And, that's not anything that blows you away. And you mentioned pretty straightforward recruiting. South Carolina, clearly the program with the most potential out of those 6, but also took an official visit to Auburn, took an official visit to Clemson. So there was some interest there. And it's 6'4", 270. He's a guy that, I think projects as someone that can come in and will at least be physically ready or at least physically close to play right away. Because that's one of the things when you're playing in the interior, and we talk about this more with offensive linemen than defensive linemen, but being able to come in and just be a big body right from the get-go is already a big step up. And also getting someone out of Georgia, that always feels good for Carolina fans, I imagine. Next up, actually, do you want to go with the third Spurs Up Friday now, or do you want to save that for last, since that was the one that people found out about latest? Let's go with it now.
Just keep it in order.
Really? Okay. I was kind of hoping.
Oh, you wanted to go.
Well, it's because he's disappointed in your decision.
Yeah, no. It's okay then. We'll go ahead and go with the newest commit for South Carolina. Wes, you crushed his name, so I'll let you do it again.
Matt Oliveira.
There you go.
Matt Oliveira or Olive. It's not Oliveira. I know it's EI.
I'm pretty sure it's Matt Oliveira.
Oliveira.
Matt Oliveira.
Yeah.
A grad transfer long snapper.
Yeah, but okay.
From Maryland.
So one of those positions that you have to if you don't have it, you notice it. You never notice the long snapper most of the time, 99% of the time. But if you have issues there, then you notice it. This is one of those roster building moves that probably goes under the radar most of the time. South Carolina went into spring needing long snappers, and I know they added one for the spring. They were looking to add more guys at that position, and he's, I believe, Chris, a 3-year starter at Maryland. Is that right?
Yeah, he started 36 straight games.
Okay, so 36 straight games. You'd assume he comes right in and starts for South Carolina. You're not going out and getting a grad transfer long snapper if he's not coming in to start. So, obviously, I think this thing got hyped up with the speculation of who it might be, and all that stuff, which is unfortunate,
including
still.
by Derek Phillips, who texted us earlier today and was like, "Who is it? Who is it?" You know, had some crazy ideas, but not crazy ideas, but had some, I guess, some very optimistic ideas about who the unnamed Spurs up was going to be.
Yes, and you know
when I texted him back and said it's long, I haven't heard back from him, so I just have to assume that he went into cardiac arrest immediately.
I mean, and I think South Carolina's they're still in with a bunch of big targets. So I think they're probably ultimately going to land. But the speculation was it kind of got funny. I mean, at the end, everything we were posting updates on, the Sunday post visit, official visit stuff. And that whole thread got turned into, it was one of these guys.
Yeah. People were like, Marcus Lattimore's got another year of eligibility.
Yeah, it's like, it got wild. But yeah, still a position that you got to have a long snapper, guys. So,
who was Steve Spurrier's favorite player of all time? It was Walker and Appen.
Was it?
I don't know. He really liked Walker, though. I mean, he's one of his favorite
players.
He
liked Ike Crowfoot, too.
He always said great things about Walker. And Walker was a rock. Walker works in this building, actually, where we're recording this.
I thought his
podcast.
two favorites of all time were Danny Warfel and Connor Shaw.
Kenny McKinley.
Probably that, because he's a quarterback. But he undeniably loved Walker because he was just solid. And he just did what he did, like you're talking about. No one's excited to hear long snapper, but you got to have one.
But you have to have one.
And when you don't have one, it's horrible because then you don't know if you can kick a field goal.
Yeah, it's like Wes said,
over your head.
It's noticeable. I mean, I remember there's been some, until they brought some guys in, some spring practices and stuff where I think it was Muschamp's first year spring practices where you're like, ooh, But Drew Williams did a great job, Dutch Fork product. He did an awesome job lately for South Carolina. Ben Asbury stepped in last year, did a good job. So it's definitely they're bringing in multiple guys, but Matt Oliveira is a guy that they're definitely bringing in, I think, with eyes on being able to win that job because of his experience.
So that wrapped up a very busy Saturday. And as I mentioned, that last one, Oliveira, we'll figure it out, was during the NBA game. So I didn't even, and we didn't hear about that officially until today. But so I was in NBA mode. But so I wake up Saturday and I'm recapping, got all the, on Gamecock Central, which is a great place to get all this information, and where I'm also a member, which y'all should also be. And I'm like, okay, wow, that was a really exciting, busy Friday for Carolina. Now it's just, on to camp. But nope. Not going to be quiet the rest of the weekend because South Carolina got its second defensive tackle commit of the weekend. I don't want to say the biggest one, but a very notable commitment from this weekend because he's a four-star guy, because he's from right up the road, went to Hammond, played for Eric Camry, and that's Hammond defensive tackle Alex Huntley committing to the Gamecocks. Guys, walk me through it.
Yeah, Alex sort of took the approach of, whatever he was going to eventually do, he just decided to go ahead and do it. And that's sort of how we explained it when we chatted with him. He got to a point where originally he wanted to decide, say in January, like in an all-star game. Then it was more decide during the season, October-ish. And then it finally got to a point where, I know I'm going to South Carolina, so just go ahead and do it now. Try to help recruit a little bit. Just go ahead and get in the class, because why wait? And so it was actually maybe a couple weeks ago, he was at the beach with his family and sort of broke the news to him that, hey, I want to go to South Carolina. And then we actually talked to him on, I guess, last Sunday, not this past Sunday, but the one before. And he said, hey, I'm moving my decision timeline up. And then the next day is when I think my understanding is he sort of officially made the call there, and then made some preparations, got a little video going that was very well done, and put that out on Saturday. So it was a big pickup for them. He's a great kid, student body president at Hannah. That's where I went.
That's where you're
Hammond.
from. He's from Hammond.
He's a student body president at Hammond. And a big kid. He's 6'4", he's 285, he'll easily be 300. He can move, lacrosse player, football player. So great kid that's not going to cause any problems, and he's really versatile, so he's a guy that's really grown, and he's really getting better and better. So I think there's still a lot of potential there. I
want to go watch him play lacrosse. Now that you're saying that, I feel like that would actually be an interesting evaluation tool, because I know a lot of football coaches will go watch their players or their targets play basketball in high school, and some of it's a recruiting tool. Hey, coach is here, he watched me play, he cares. But it's an interesting evaluation tool to watch a guy run the court in basketball. see if he can dunk, see what type of explosiveness he has.
Just a different kind of athleticism, some different problem solving, things like that.
Yeah, but watching a kid that's 6'4", 285 play lacrosse, I don't know, frankly, anything about lacrosse, but I'd imagine there's not many guys as big as him out there. That would be an interesting recruit or evaluation tool to go watch Alex play, but I think that speaks to his ability to move his feet, his quickness, and Chris talked to Eric Kimmery. I ended up writing the article, but Chris talked to him, and he said that he's probably the best leader he's coached in 15 years of coaching, which I think obviously says a lot. We see all the tangible tools that he has, his ability, but this is also a kid that is just loaded with intangibles, and I think fits the culture of what Muschamp is trying to build at South Carolina. You want talented kids, but you want guys that, buy into your program and buy into what you're building. And he's a Columbia kid who did not say the grass is greener elsewhere. He saw the potential in his program. You saw, for those who haven't watched this video, I think most people listening to this probably have, but if you haven't, very well done, but incorporating
the city and the State House. Yep.
Stuff like that.
It was a well done announcement video.
Yeah, incorporated his teammates as well, which was cool. But to have it on the State House steps, and then to have like you said, Soda City involved, and just for it to be Columbia based, and the message of being able to find what he was looking for, and how he was looking elsewhere, but he found that it was right here at home. I thought was very well done, and shout out to Matthew Weathersby, by the way, who is Man WEATH on Twitter, who did the video. But yeah, that was cool, man. I thought just to incorporate all those elements was very well done.
Yeah, it's a huge gift for Carolina. And if I can just add my own personal anecdote, as someone that has coached him in basketball, talking about cross sport.
There you go. Let's hear it.
He played church league basketball with my brother, and I coached some of their games. And I mean, everything you're saying about the intangibles, about the leadership, I mean, it's church league basketball, so they don't take it that seriously anyways, even though it is like the most important thing in the world. And don't let that be lost in any of this. But, he's 6'4", 280, whatever, how big he is. He could have just gone down and just been like, okay, give me the ball every time. I'm DeMarcus Cousins. I'm just going to, smash these little kids that aren't good at basketball, that are just playing church league because it's kind of fun. People like my brother. And he didn't. And he was just a workman. And he would go and he would rebound and he would just set screens. And I'd be like, all right, Boogie, go get this rebound for us. And he's like, all right. And, he didn't need to score 25 points a game or just like dunk on kids. Although he swatted just the sin out of some balls. Some poor little like 5'6" kid who just had no idea what was coming. And he would just, basically destroy the basketball, which was always really fun to watch. But just a great
teammate.
The
sin out of it.
Yeah. Oh man, it was he exercised the demons from that basketball. But yeah, I mean, I just tell that to kind of be funny. But I mean, really, like he had no problem just setting screens and getting rebounds and doing whatever his team had to do to win. We were one win away from the finals, and if I had coached that game, we would have won.
Oh, who coached it?
Edwin Probst and Spencer Jenkins. Shout out those
guys.
two.
What are y'all doing?
Actually, you know what? I think I did coach last game. I think we lost, and I was coaching. I can't exactly remember. They coached most of the games. I coached some of them. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I did coach the game that we lost.
Oh, so poor coaching.
Yeah.
But hey, I also got to throw in. Speaking of videos, I thought it was really cool the video that I guess one of his friends or teammates on Twitter, David Prince, posted of him doing his first sandstorm. Did y'all see that?
No, I didn't see it.
It was Alex coming out to the car, and the kid had Sandstorm playing, and just like a very...
it was like in the parking lot of Hammond or something?
Well, he's picking him up from a house. I don't know where it's at, but it was just like a very genuine, cool moment.
Yeah.
Like he had Sandstorm playing when he ran out there, and then he was doing the Spurs up like he had a towel in his hand or something. So I feel like this was like a really just cool... Obviously a great moment for South Carolina, getting a great player, but I felt like it was like a cool local moment for a lot of people who, have watched Boogie grow as a person, as a player, and just for the whole Hammond community. I think it was pretty special for all those guys.
That was certainly the icing on the cake of the weekend. As I mentioned, a big get. The other guys were 2 and 3 stars. Alex Huntley sort of the crown jewel of this weekend, if for no other reason than just by virtue of being a 4-star guy. But Will Muschamp wasn't done. He had one more commit yet to go, one more Spurs up from this weekend, and that is Abbeville offensive lineman Trey Jones. He's a 3-star guy, 6'3", 270. This came, I guess, a little bit after Boogie. This was Saturday, early afternoon or late morning. Were you guys just dead at this point?
I didn't die until Sunday.
Okay. It all kind of caught up to you the next day.
Sunday afternoon, I went to dinner and I was like, I'm gonna put my phone on the table and just leave it for a little while and watched a movie, and that was that. So
what'd you watch?
I'd rather not say.
Wait, now you have to say. What is it?
No, it's all good.
No. Wait. What is it? I can
Trey
cut
Jones.
this out. I need to know what you watched.
No,
Just
I'll
personal.
tell you after.
No, was it that? It can't have been that bad. Was
Anyway,
it Princess Diaries too?
How did you know?
It wasn't.
Similar.
Oh, you're the worst. You're the worst kind of person. I'm leaving this in so everyone knows that you suck.
It's okay, man. What time did Trey Jones commit?
I don't remember, Wes.
Afternoon.
The entire thing is a blur to me.
Yeah.
That's not one of the facts
Chris is
about
like,
the weekend that I have.
It was this weekend. That's
Pearson
all I know.
hates me now.
It was this weekend.
I do
yeah.
a little bit, honestly.
It was like afternoon or
All right,
evening-ish.
so Trey Jones, 4.67, 40-yard dash for a dude that's like, 270 pounds, 6'2". Great shuttle time, very long arms. And they put a lot into these, camp evaluations, into the timing and stuff like that. 4.4 shuttle, had a 32-inch vertical, which is, for a lineman, is crazy. And, I think shows a lot about explosiveness. You've heard Wolf talk about in the media sessions, Jalen Nichols. I think, what did he say vertical? Like a 31-inch when Wolf talked to the media this spring. It was like 30 plus.
It was 30 plus for sure, yeah.
That shows explosiveness for a guy that's near 300 pounds to be able to push his body that high off the ground is insane. So, and we've seen Chris, him sort of take this approach of adding athleticism to the offensive line, not really putting quite as much stock into height that maybe some O-line coaches do. The kid's 6'2". He has long arms, though. We saw it with Ronald Patrick way back when Wolford was here before. But, I think there's a lot to like about this pick and this pickup. And he was a guy that at the Rivals camp actually impressed some of our guys, too, as being one of the better sort of under-the-radar kids. Yeah,
I mean, if you can find offensive linemen that are 330 pounds and can really move and are powerful and are intelligent, that's great. But, that there has been a little bit more of a trend of just getting back to just tremendous athletes who are a little bit lighter up front in some cases. You look even at the NFL, I mean, they've got some really big dudes there too, but you look at, I was looking over a list the other day of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. One of them was Shaq Mason, who played at Georgia Tech. He was a mid 3-star. He's 6'1", but he's got longer arms, and he's just a really good football player. One of the Kelsey brothers for the Philadelphia Eagles, who's a center. I mean, he's probably the best center in the game. He is a smaller guy. He started his career at Cincinnati as a walk-on linebacker, I believe. So, you can find, if you find guys who have athleticism and physical traits to where they can move, they can bend, they're intelligent, and they project to be a guy that can play with technique and get bigger and stronger, then there's a good chance that you're going to have a good offensive lineman on your hands. It's a really, we talked about how defensive backs were tough to evaluate. Offensive line's really difficult. Even if you get them on, you see them on film, you go watch them, you get them in camp, watch them play basketball. I mean, it's still just a really tough position to project. So if you're going to missing on a guy that has those types of physical attributes, you can live with that, I think. And when you can move like that, the chances of missing, you really reduce your margin for error, I think.
Well, it's interesting that a guy that's as athletic as Jones is, you mentioned the shuttle time, the 40 time, the vertical, all those things didn't garner a bigger offer list. I mean, he had offers from Coastal, Elon, Furman, Georgia State, Western Carolina. According to Rivals, I don't know if this is exactly right, but no official visits to any schools. But it sounds like this is just he wanted to go to Carolina. Carolina wanted him. And these are the sorts of, marginal picks that, not because he's a marginal player, but the picks that sort of, or not the picks, the these are the recruits that sort of occupy the margins where they don't move the needle as much, but they fill out a class. And when you get a 3-star guy and are able to turn him into, a player that's as productive as the 4 or 5-star guys on your roster, that's when you really start to cultivate the depth. And yes, you need talent on your team, like unquestionably. And I think I've talked on this podcast about the blue chip ratio, and you got to get a bunch of 4 and 5-star guys. But the next level is getting those 2 and 3-star guys and getting them to like 4-star level productivity. And with his size, with his athleticism, and just my unwavering trust in Coach Eric Wolford, this seems like a good get for Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I had somebody, just sort of going back to the offer list, being more modest, I had somebody at Abbeville tell me that, they heard from a lot of college coaches that if he was an inch or 2 taller, that he would have a bucket load of offers. And on one hand, that makes sense because that does give him, 6'4", for instance, 6'4", 270, 275, and running at his size. That's more of an eye-opener. But it's also a little bit silly, because you think about an inch or 2 and whether or not it's going to make that big of a difference. So then that's where you go to, okay, arm size. How well does he move? Or hand size, arm length. How well does he move? How well does he bend? And ultimately, if those things are good enough, you're not going to worry as much about an inch. Now, Will Muschamp talks a lot about defensive backs. They look for or at every position, they look for certain critical factors. So if they have a cornerback, they would like these certain dimensions, certain height, certain weight, certain 40 times, certain vertical. But if a player doesn't hit those, then they better be really good in other certain areas. So for Trey Jones, no, he's not going to hit. You don't draw up an offensive lineman ideally and say, okay, 6'2". That's not your prototypical. But when you look at his numbers and the way that he can move, it's very hard to find that. So that's why you take a guy like that.
And I think we're going to see this continue where if you look at Wolford's classes in general, most years, there's going to be 4 or 5 guys in the class, and there's going to be a couple or a few guys at the top of the class that are like highly ranked, like stud guys, Isaiah Walker types, 4-star. Everybody wants them, that they're battling for, that they're fighting for, that you maybe don't know if you're going to hang on to them or not. In this case, you look back, Dylan Wanham a couple of classes ago, as highly recruited as about anybody out there, as highly ranked as anybody out there. Ja'Kai Moore last year wasn't as highly ranked for some reason, but, you're fighting Penn State for the kid. That's the top 2. You look across his class last year, and you find a guy like Mark Fox, who was a 4-star kid, but then you're going to find your Jalen Nichols of the world, who was actually a low 3-star on Rivals, which is crazy to me, but was 6'6", 290, and an incredible athlete, came in early, and actually, if you listen to Will Muschamp, he was one of the true freshmen this spring that he kept bringing up as looking the part. So I think on the offensive line, when you're taking so many guys, and especially under Wolford, you're going to have this combination of guys where every year a couple of them are going to be sort of very highly ranked, and then you're going to have a couple of them who are more evaluation guys and guys that are locked in, and frankly, guys that, they're not going to worry about a Trey Jones decommitting and going somewhere else. This is a guy that's locked in, that's all about the Gamecocks. He's dreamed of playing for the Gamecocks, and then you fill out the class with guys like this, and then at the top you have your Dylan Wanhams and your Isaiah Walkers and your guys like that.
That was the exciting headline part of the weekend, but it wasn't near the entirety of what was happening in Columbia in terms of recruiting. Obviously, we have camp, which I mentioned we'll talk about on a podcast later this week, but even just on this part of recruiting, there were 5 official visitors in Columbia at South Carolina this weekend, not in the group that we just mentioned of guys that committed. We can just go through those guys quickly, who was on campus, what you heard after their visit from South Carolina.
Yeah, I think once again, it went very well. It always does on these, though. Frankly,
one of the official visits was Marshawn Lloyd, who's already committed to South Carolina. The other 4 as yet uncommitted.
Right, and Marshawn Lloyd, the one guy out of the 5 that we have not spoken with, he left a little bit early on Sunday, got back home. Heard it went well. He was actually at the camp that we were at on Saturday and sort of just hanging out, spent a lot of time with Thomas Brown, and even was tweeting congratulations to Alex Huntley for committing. Seems to be very, very, I think, locked in. Just the that's the vibe I get. That I think a lot of people with him sort of being a surprise commitment. Everybody's like, well, what's the likelihood that this sticks? How locked into South Carolina is he? The vibe I get is that he's very locked in. Chris, do you sort of get the same?
Absolutely,
vibe, that he wants to be at South Carolina, wants to create his own legacy. I think that's a big part of this, and I think he believes in this program. So that went well. You sort of go down the list. Jaheim Bell, you want to hit on him a little bit, Chris? I know coming in South Carolina, even before the official visit, had really, I think, gained some steam coming into this weekend with Jaheim.
Yeah, he's sort of a flex tight end type prospect from Georgia, from Valdosta that Carolina's done really good work with. Like Wes said, even coming into the visit, a little bit of buzz there, and sort of made it an anticipated visit. He was in with some family, including his mother, and I think made a huge impression. Just Jaheim didn't give away a ton in our talk with him, which you can read on Gamecock Central, but from what we've heard, things went quite well there. I think they did a really good job of selling him on South Carolina and sort of the vision that they have for him as a student athlete, playing within the offense, the potential for early playing time. I think all those things really appeal to him, and he spent some time hanging out at camp. He's hosted or was hanging out at the camp with Keel Pollard, and some members of the staff were there. So I think they've done really good work with him. He's going to be back at Florida this coming weekend because his team has a 7-on-7 tournament there. May take some other official visits as well, but I still think South Carolina has a solid shot there to pull off a flip.
Yeah, then you get on the list of Rashawn Lee. They offered last year when they were going after Ja'Kai Moore, got him out of Virginia. Ja'Kai hosted Rashawn Lee on his official visit this weekend. I believe that was his second visit to campus. I know he was in January as well. But another kid that I think they lead for, Rashawn didn't say that himself, but he had a South Carolina official. That was his first and only so far. He's going to official to Pitt next weekend, and that would be June 14th, or this weekend, I should say. And then next week, maybe June 17th or June 18th, actually is going to look at maybe making his decision. So I think anytime a guy sets his decision right after an official visit, that's a good sign. I talked to him after he raved about it, and I think Ja'Kai did a really good job of just talking to him about what it's like once you get on campus, what to expect when you arrive, what it's like coming from Virginia to Columbia, all that stuff. It just sort of worked out for South Carolina. So now you're talking about another, big offensive line target for Eric Wolford that they, I think they could be closing in on possibly landing here soon.
And a guy from the state of Virginia. He's also got offers from North Carolina State. He's got offers from Tennessee, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, other places that are a lot closer to home for him. So this is another example of, not moving the needle necessarily because he's a 3-star guy, but right now he's listed at 6'4", 285. Seems like he has the physicality, and for Wolford to be able to go in and win some of these head-to-head recruiting battles. NC State's not a powerhouse. Tennessee is still, a long way away, but certainly on the upswing. And if Carolina's winning those sorts of head-to-head battles with schools like that, or, even a West Virginia, I don't know how much interest he had in West Virginia initially, but even still, it's one you look at and you say that's closer to home for him than Columbia. That's going to be another good get for Carolina.
Yeah, I think so. And, another kid that fits the program, just chatting with him, you can tell with a lot of kids, just chatting with them about their personality and their approach to the game and life, and wants to be a mass communications major, and actually met with some of the professors about that and was very excited about that part of it. They do such a good job, and I'm sure every school does, frankly, but they do such a good job with the official visits these days of making sure all that's handled. They've even incorporated the I'm sure people have seen on Twitter where current players are like learning how to cook for themselves under the nutrition staff. Rashawn was telling me that they ate great, but one of the things that they did was they actually got to cook their own meals. So he's like, I don't cook at home, but he had cooked like stir fry rice and chicken and steak and all this stuff for the first time, which was like just kind of a cool little. You're not just telling them what you do for current players, you're showing them and letting them experience it. So I thought that was kind of interesting and kind of
so
neat.
Fun. Like I can't imagine how nice it must be to just cook in like a fully stocked kitchen all the time. Yeah, we were talking to Carolina's nutritionist, or I was when we took our visit, the media visit or tour for the football ops building. And apparently the players have come up with some really interesting concoctions, some interesting sauces and stuff like that. Apparently AJ Turner likes to cook in there, and she was telling me a whole bunch of other players that have had fun with that. And that doesn't seem, for those of you listening, it's like, oh, who cares? But like for a lot of players, that's not why you're going to go to a school, but that's the kind of fun stuff that, if there are two schools that are like roughly equal, those are the kinds of like, they seem trivial, but that stuff is really fun for a kid, I think.
Well, and how many kids that are first getting to college, like, truly know how to cook? Like, not just, can throw together a sandwich or throw something in the microwave, but truly know how to...
I don't think making a sandwich qualifies as cooking.
That's what I'm saying, though. But for a high school kid, like, that's like that's maybe the extent of making your own food, I should say, rather than cooking. But so you're teaching them... the kids maybe look at that one way, but then the parents probably look at that as like you're teaching them a life skill.
Exactly.
So
there's not enough of that, Like I didn't know how to do my taxes after I graduated from college. What was that, 4 years worth?
Exactly. So I like those elements.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a high school coach. He was talking about the progress of South Carolina and facilities and stuff like that. And he had a good point, and it was that South Carolina has eliminated about as many negatives about the program as you possibly can, as far as what can other schools use against you. Can you use the history against them still? Absolutely. That can't change. But as far as the ops building, the support staff, the coaching staff, all that other stuff is in place. So you're eliminating things that other teams can say about you that could be perceived as a negative. And I think that's what you have to do to go to battle with the big schools, such as they are with Reggie Grimes, Chris, who I think they're battling sort of Alabama, where his dad played, maybe some Tennessee in there as well. But sounds like, and I always like reading his interviews. He's like a very thoughtful kid. I feel like gives in-depth stuff. But what's your take on Reggie Grimes? Is he enjoying the process, but still a long shot for South Carolina? Or do you think this is a real chance that the kid could actually end up in Columbia?
Yeah, I don't think he's a lock for Alabama. That's what we sort of pretty consistently been told. He does have that family tie. And look, typically when you see, not everywhere, but really at Alabama, if you've got a situation where a kid's a legacy and there's an offer and they really want the kid, it's pretty tough to beat. Marlon Humphrey's one that comes to mind. There was a lot of talk about other schools with Marlon, but at the end of the day, several years back, it was going to be really tough to beat tough to beat Alabama for Marlon Humphrey.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this is quite that type of situation. I think he's very open to others. Interestingly, Alabama wanted him to camp this summer and sort of get a better feel for where he would play and a little bit just get another look at him. And he's apparently not going to do that, which is interesting. But he's got an official visit scheduled there to Tuscaloosa in September. Tennessee's definitely been in the mix, but South Carolina, they've he could play either position. He'd probably be a buck type on defense, or he could play tight end on offense. And, he plays some running back in high school as well. So he's a guy that I think likes South Carolina, and I think they're just both sides are going to keep things warm and see where it goes from here. But I don't think he's an Alabama lock. I don't really get that sense. Could he end up there? Sure.
And he's got offers from Alabama, Florida State, LSU, Tennessee, Clemson, just go down the line, both the Mississippi schools, and Nebraska, and Ohio State, and Oklahoma, Penn State, basically everywhere, anywhere that he wants to go. So this will certainly be one to keep an eye on. Right now, the Rivals forecast does say Alabama, but it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, that's only about 37% confidence, which sounds like sort of what you're saying, Chris. Maybe the front runner right now, but far from a lock. Last guy that Carolina had on campus this weekend is a JUCO wide receiver, Malik Heath, 6'3", 210, and then has an offer list that's the SEC and then Washington State. I hadn't looked at it until just now, but it's Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina, Tennessee, and then Wazoo. So what do you know about Malik Heath and his recruitment process?
Yeah, a little bit of just a random visit. Wasn't one we had anticipated a ton, like a bunch of them, but really good player from what I've heard. And the visit, I think, just sort of blew him away. He talked about it was amazing was the word he used, and I don't know if he quite realized what all South Carolina had to offer until he took this visit. I think Florida firmly in the mix. He's going to take an official there. Mississippi State, where he signed with out of high school, I believe still firmly in the mix as well. But, it went well. He's not going to make a decision until mid-season. So I don't really think we have a feel yet for how this one's going to play out. But as far as, them being in the mix and putting their best foot forward and having a really good visit, I think all those things are true. We'll just sort of see how things play out, on his end and on South Carolina's end, I think, moving forward.
And looking at his Rivals profile right now, got a very sharp picture of him in a blue jacket and a bow tie. Most of the players just have, like, a picture of them in their pads or whatever, but I appreciate the bow tie. Malik, if you're listening to this, I dig the bow tie. Always a classy look. So that pretty much wraps up what was an unbelievably busy recruiting weekend, but we really just scratched the surface. If you want even more in-depth on all of these guys, on, again, just a crazy weekend for Carolina, you can find all that on Gamecock Central. If you're not an insider, by the way, you can use the exclusive podcast code GCPod and get a month for free to check out all the recruiting action. Very busy time. Y'all can get insights into camp and a little bit more on all these guys that we just talked about. And then you'll love it. And then you'll be a subscriber forever if you want to do that. I want to remind you again to rate, review, subscribe to this podcast. Share it with your friends. It's a great way to help support if you want us to keep doing it. And regardless of how you feel about that, we will at least be back later this week to have a more extensive breakdown of camp, because I promised that we would get to that, and there was just too much just in terms of recruiting to hit just in this one podcast. So that's going to do it for Wes and Chris and myself today, but we will talk to you again later this week with a full breakdown of Thursday, Friday, Saturday camp. See y'all then.